Cold stone bites through thin slippers, and the smell of crushed lilies cannot mask what's underneath: sweat, fear, the iron tang of something close to violence. A hand closes around a wrist and yanks hard enough to spin a body off balance. Laughter follows, not loud. Worse than loud, the kind people use when they want you to know you aren't worth raising their voice for. She does not fall. That matters more than anything else in this moment. She does not fall. Even as the crowd parts to watch her stumble toward the edge of the festival square, even as the woman responsible smooths her own skirts like she's brushed away a fly rather than a person. "Make room," the woman says, not to the girl, to everyone else. As if the girl is furniture being relocated. The square holds its breath, 200 lanterns swaying overhead like they too are waiting to see what happens to a girl with no name worth using. 3 feet away, something shifts. A presence that wasn't paying attention is suddenly paying very close attention. Ilara had known, walking into the Moon Festival tonight, that her stepmother would find some way to remind the court what she was. She had not known it would happen in the first 10 minutes in front of the entire gathered nobility, with the king's own banners snapping overhead like teeth. She straightens her spine before her hands. That is the order she has trained herself into: spine first, hands second, face last. By the time anyone looks at her properly, there is nothing on her face for them to read. Lady Voss, her stepmother, does not look back to check the damage. She never does. Cruelty delivered and witnessed is enough for her. She does not need to watch it land. She moves toward the wine table with her 2 natural daughters trailing her like well-dressed shadows, already laughing about something else, already certain the matter is finished. It is not finished. Ilara simply does not let it show. She has spent 6 years learning the difference between submission and patience, and the court has never once told them apart. Patience taught her to listen at doorways, to remember every alliance and slight spoken over her head, as though she were invisible furniture with excellent hearing. No one believes a discarded stepdaughter is dangerous in the listening. The festival itself smells of pine smoke and crushed mint, the high mountain air sharp enough to sting the back of the throat. Lanterns shaped like moons hang from black iron. Frames, their light pooling gold over stone that has hosted 100 years of this same ritual, wolves of every bloodline gathering under a single sky to renew the old pacts. Somewhere a drum keeps a slow, deliberate rhythm, the kind meant to be felt in the chest, rather than heard. She finds a position near a pillar, half in shadow, the way she has positioned herself at every gathering since she was 12. From here she can see the whole court arranged by rank and ambition, and she can see him. He is not looking for anyone. That is the first thing she notices, the thing that separates him from every other man in the square performing for an audience. Kale Ashran, Alpha King of the Northern Wilds, stands near the dais with his arms loose at his sides, unbothered by the weight of 200 pairs of eyes. Power radiates from him not as performance, but as fact, the way heat radiates from stone that has sat in the sun all day. People angle their bodies toward him without seeming to notice they are doing it. His voice, when he finally speaks to the steward beside him, is low and unhurried, pitched for one listener rather than a crowd, and yet it carries anyway, the particular authority of a man who has never needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. She memorizes the line of his jaw before she memorizes anything else about him. Not handsome in the soft way court poets favor, something colder than that, more deliberate, like a blade kept honed rather than displayed. Then Lady Voss shoves her, and his attention turns. It happens fast, and it happens in front of everyone. The push sends Ilara 2 steps sideways, nearly into the lantern stand, and the small clay cup of festival wine she'd been holding shatters against the stone. Red wine spreads across pale rock like something more violent than it is. "Clumsy girl," Lady Voss says, loud enough now, performing for the nearby cluster of nobles. "I told you not to come. You ruin everything you touch." Ilara does not look at the wine. She looks at her stepmother, and for one held second, she lets something show, not tears, never tears, but a flicker of cold, clear contempt that she usually keeps buried 6 feet under composure. It is gone as fast as it came, but someone has seen it. That wine, Kale says, and the square goes very still, was a gift from the Thornwood pack, brewed for tonight only. His tone has not changed. It does not need to. Someone will want to explain why it's on the ground. Lady Voss's smile thins. A small accident, Your Grace. Nothing worth your time. I decide what's worth my time. He has not moved from where he stood, and yet the distance between them feels smaller, as though the air itself rearranged to bring him closer. Without requiring his feet to do the work, his gaze finds Alara directly for the first time. Are you hurt? No one has asked her that in this square in 6 years. The question lands strangely, like a key turned in a lock she'd assumed was rusted shut. No, she says, 2 syllables, no tremor in them, though she has to work for that. Your name? Alara. She does not offer a house. Lady Voss made certain years ago that the name attached to her means nothing worth claiming. Something shifts in his expression, small, contained, the kind of change a person would miss if they weren't watching for it. Not pity. She would have walked away from pity. This is closer to recognition, the look of a man noting a detail he intends to keep. Alara, he repeats, testing the shape of it once like he's filing it somewhere permanent. Then to the steward beside him without any particular emphasis. Replace the wine and clear a space at the dais. Your Grace, Lady Voss begins. I wasn't speaking to you. The silence that follows has texture. The kind people will describe later as the moment something shifted, even if none of them can say exactly what. Lady Voss's daughters exchange a glance. The crowd, hungry for spectacle and handed an unexpected one, leans in without moving an inch. Alara keeps her chin level, refusing to let her surprise reach her face, though inside something unfamiliar uncoils, not hope. She will not call it hope, but its colder, more careful cousin. I don't need a space at your dais, she says quietly, only for him. I need to not be the evening's entertainment. His attention sharpens at that, the first true crack in his composure all night. Most people thank him. Most people angle for more. She has handed him the opposite, and he does not. Seem to know, for one unguarded second, what to do with a woman who wants less rather than more. Then walk with me, he says. Quietly, no one needs to watch that either. It is not a command, though it could have been one in another man's mouth. It is something closer to an offer extended without expectation of acceptance. And that, more than the wine, more than the public correction of her stepmother, is what finally moves her feet. They walk the perimeter of the square together, far enough from the crowd that conversation becomes private, close enough that every eye in the festival tracks the distance between them like a held breath. You didn't need to do that, she says. I'm aware of what I needed to do. A pause. I did this instead. Why? He does not answer immediately, and the silence stretches into something deliberate rather than evasive. The kind of silence that asks her to wait for an answer worth having rather than fill the gap with something hollow. I'll tell you when I understand it myself, he says finally. She should find that frustrating. Instead, she finds it honest, and honesty from a king is rarer than the wine he just had replaced. The trouble begins 3 days later, and it begins with a letter sealed in wax the color of dried blood. Kale reads it twice before he allows his face to show anything, and even then what shows is barely a tightening around the eyes, the look of a man recalculating every move he's made in the last 72 hours. The Thornwood envoy is dead, he tells his second, Bren, in the small council chamber where the fire has burned down to coals nobody has fed. Found in his own bed, no mark on him. Poison. Bren says it flatly, already moving to the maps spread across the table. Poison meant for someone at the festival who drank from the wrong cup. Kale sets the letter down with more care than it deserves. The wine Lady Voss's stepdaughter spilled, it was meant to reach the dais, meant to reach me, or close enough that the difference wouldn't matter to whoever sent it. Bren's expression doesn't change, but something in the room does. She saved your life and doesn't know it. She doesn't know it, Kale agrees. And I'd prefer she stays that way until I understand who wants me dead badly enough to use a festival gift as the method. What he does not say, because he has not fully admitted it even to himself, is that the girl with the level chin and the contained voice has occupied more of his attention in 3 days than anything in the last 3 years. Alara, for her part, has her own letter to contend with, though hers arrives by a different method entirely, her stepsister Margit, cornering her in the kitchen garden with the particular cruelty of someone who has just learned something useful. "You're to be summoned," Margit says, delighting in it. "The king wants you questioned about the wine." Questioned. That's the word the steward used. Margit's smile has teeth in it. "Mother says you should deny everything. Say you saw nothing. Say you don't remember." "Remember what?" Margit's smile falters, the first sign she said more than she meant to. "Nothing. Just be careful what you tell him." Alara has spent her entire life reading the spaces between what people say and what they mean, and the space here is wide enough to walk through. Her stepmother knows something about that wine. Knows enough to be afraid of a question rather than the answer. She does not run to the king with this. She has learned, in 6 years of being underestimated, that information is the only currency she's ever held, and she does not spend it carelessly. Instead, she goes to the one person in this court who has shown her, twice now, that he sees her as something other than furniture. But she goes carefully, the way she does everything, weighing each word before she lets it leave her mouth. The summons, when it comes, is not the public spectacle Margit promised. Kale receives her in a smaller room, just the two of them and Bren standing near the door like a piece of architecture pretending not to listen. "Tell me about the wine," Kale says, no preamble. He has the kind of directness that doesn't waste a person's time, and she finds, unexpectedly, that she respects it. "It was a gift cup. I didn't choose it. It was handed to me by one of the serving staff near the Thornwood banner." She considers her next words with the same care she gives everything. "My stepmother pushed me before I could drink it." Something settles behind his eyes, not relief, something heavier than relief. "Before. Yes. Do you know why she pushed you?" "I assumed cruelty." She doesn't typically require a better reason. But even as she says it, the conversation with Margit replays, the careful warning wrapped inside casual gossip. "She told my stepsister to warn me to deny everything, to say I remember nothing." Bren shifts near the door. Kale doesn't look at him, but Alara sees the small communication pass between them anyway, the kind two people develop after years of reading each other in rooms full of danger. "Your stepmother may have known what was in that cup," Kale says, "or known enough to. Want it nowhere near her own daughters." The floor of Alara's understanding tilts. "She let me hold a cup she thought might kill someone." "She let you hold a cup she thought might kill me," Kale corrects, quiet and precise. "And whether she knew that or simply didn't care who drank it, I intend to find out. You think she's involved in trying to kill you?" "I think," he says, "that someone wanted me dead at that festival and your stepmother's behavior that night makes considerably more sense if she knew something the rest of us didn't." Alara should feel fear at this, fear for herself, fear of the danger now circling closer than she understood. What she feels instead, underneath the fear, is something colder and clearer, the realization that her stepmother has, for the first time in 6 years, made a mistake large enough to matter. What happens to her if you're right? That depends entirely on how deep this goes. He studies her for a long moment, the kind of look that takes inventory rather than admires. "It also depends on what protecting you costs me, because if she's working with someone who wanted that cup to reach the dais, you've become a witness she'd very much like silenced. You're protecting me. I'm keeping a witness alive." But his voice, when he says it, lacks the conviction the words are meant to carry, and they both hear the gap between what he's claiming and what he means. He gives the order anyway, quiet, deliberate, costing him exactly the kind of political capital a king should be careful with. Alara is to be moved to the eastern wing of the keep, under guard, under his name rather than any official charge that would require explanation to the council. It is not subtle. It will be noticed, discussed, weighed by every noble house. Watching how their king spends his protection. "This will cost you," she tells him. "Everything costs something," he says. "I've decided this is worth it." It is the closest he has come to an answer to the question he refused to answer 3 days A go, and she does not push for more. Restraint, she is learning, is its own kind of honesty. The fire in the small eastern chamber has burned down to a low orange glow by the time. Kale finds her there, 3 nights later, neither of them having sought the meeting on purpose, and neither of them leaving once it happens. He looks tired in a way the festival crowd never sees, shoulders set differently, the careful authority loosened like armor unbuckled after a long day. It makes him look younger, like a man rather than an institution. "You're not sleeping," she says, because someone should say it, and no one else in this keep seems willing to. "Neither are you." He nods at the book open and unread in her lap, the same page for the better part of an hour. She sets it aside. "What keeps you up?" He considers the question with the same weight he gives everything, turning a cup of wine. He hasn't touched between his fingers. The names I haven't ruled out yet. The fact that someone close enough to reach the festival wine is close enough to reach worse things. And what keeps you up tonight specifically? Not the general fear, the specific one. Something flickers across his face, surprise maybe, that she's pressed past the easy answer to the real one. "You ask direct questions. You give incomplete answers. I'm trying to even the exchange." A short, unexpected sound escapes him, not quite a laugh, but its quieter relative. "Fair." He sets the cup down. "I keep thinking about how close that cup came to your hands instead of mine. If your stepmother had pushed you a moment later, if you'd already been drinking. You're not responsible for what she did. I'm responsible for what happens in my kingdom." His eyes hold hers, and there is nothing performed in the way he looks at her now, nothing calculated for an audience that isn't there. "I keep thinking I should regret making you a target by keeping you close. I don't." The fire pops, sends a brief shower of sparks against the hearthstone. Neither of them moves to feed it. "What do you want?" she asks quietly. "That you haven't let yourself want." He doesn't answer immediately, and this silence is different from the others, not strategic. Not deliberate. This one is simply a man without a ready answer, caught somewhere he hasn't planned for. "I haven't decided I'm allowed the question," he says finally. "Kings aren't generally permitted ordinary wanting." That sounds lonely. It is. He says it plainly, without self-pity, the way a person states a fact about weather. "What about you? What have you wanted and refused yourself?" She looks at the fire rather than at him, because some honesty is easier delivered sideways. To matter to someone without having to earn it first. "I've spent 6 years earning everything, every meal, every kindness, every place at a table. I don't know what it would feel like to simply be wanted instead of justified." The room holds something neither of them names. He is close enough now that she can feel the warmth radiating off him, competing with the dying fire, close enough that the space between them has become its own kind of pressure. He reaches out, not to touch her, simply to take the unused cup from her loose fingers, an excuse disguised as a gesture, and his hand brushes hers in the transfer, deliberate despite the practical cover for it. "Bren will be here within the hour with reports from the border patrols," he says, and just like that the window closes, practical instructions sealing over whatever almost happened like ice forming on still water. "You should rest before then." "Should I?" "You should." But he doesn't move toward the door yet, and for one more held second, neither of them pretends the conversation is actually finished. The attack comes 4 nights later, and it does not arrive quietly. Fire first, a section of the eastern wall lit deliberately, smoke pouring into the corridor before the alarm bells found their rhythm. She is awake before the first bell, already moving, already calculating the nearest exit the way 6 years of vigilance trained her to. Bren reaches her chamber before the guards do, his sword already drawn, blood already on his sleeve from some earlier engagement she hasn't witnessed. "Stay behind me," he says, and for once she doesn't argue with an order. The corridor beyond is chaos given shape, armed men in unfamiliar colors pressing toward the eastern wing with a directness that tells her this was never random. They came for something specific. They came for her. Kale arrives like weather changing. One moment the corridor holds only Bren's sword and her own held breath, and the next his presence fills the space entirely. His voice, cutting through the noise, with an authority that requires no volume to be obeyed. "Stand down," he says to his own men scrambling into position, "or get out of my way." Then, to the intruders pressing closer, "You've made a mistake coming here under my roof." He does not fight like a man performing competence for an audience. He fights like violence. Is a language he's fluent in and would rather not need, each strike economical and precise rather than dramatic. Alara watches from behind Bren's shoulder and understands, with sudden clarity, why the court rearranges itself around this man without seeming to notice they're doing it. The fight is short and entirely one-sided. When it ends, one attacker remains alive, dragged forward by the collar of his coat, and Kale's voice when he speaks to the man carries something colder than anger, the particular stillness of a king deciding exactly how much mercy a situation deserves. "Who sent you?" The man says nothing. Kale's grip tightens, not dramatically, just enough to communicate the limits of his patience. "I'll ask once more under my name, with my seal as witness to whatever happens next if you don't answer." His tone makes clear this is not a threat performed for effect. It is simply true. "Who sent you?" The name that finally comes, forced loose by fear rather than loyalty broken, is one Alara has heard her entire life muttered behind doors that thought she wasn't listening. A name connected, however distantly, to the household she grew up invisible inside. Her stepmother's family. Not her stepmother directly, but close enough that the line between them blurs into something undeniable. The weight of it lands on her chest like cold water. She has spent 6 years believing her stepmother's cruelty was small, petty, contained to insults and neglect. This is larger than anything she imagined, and it means she has been living, unknowingly, inside. Conspiracy with consequences far beyond a ruined cup of wine. Kale's eyes find hers across the smoke-thinned corridor, and something passes between them that has no need for words, recognition, fear held in check. The unnamed thing neither of them has agreed to call by its real name yet. "You're not alone in this," he says, quiet enough that it's meant only for her, though the entire corridor could probably hear it if they were listening. "Whatever this is, whoever they are, you're not alone in it." She believes him. That, more than the fire or the fight or the name finally spoken aloud, is the thing that frightens her most. They stand together afterward in the cooling ash of the corridor, guards clearing debris around them, the adrenaline of the fight settling into something heavier and quieter. "Why did you fight like that?" she asks. "For someone you've known 11 days. It is the question that has circled them since the festival, finally asked plainly, and he does not deflect it the way he has every time before. "Because the moment your stepmother pushed you aside in that square, something in me decided you mattered before I'd finished deciding why." He says it without performance, without the practiced ease of a man delivering a line he's used before. "I've spent 11 days trying to find a better answer. There isn't one. That's not an explanation, that's a confession. I'm aware." Something moves in his expression, unguarded for once, the careful authority set down entirely. "I came because I couldn't have done otherwise. I don't know what to call that yet. I know I'm not interested in calling it nothing." The line lands between them like something finally set down after being carried too long. She has spent 6 years refusing herself the want for exactly this, to matter without justification, to be chosen without earning it first. And here, in the wreckage of a fight that nearly cost them both everything, it has simply arrived, asked for nothing, demanded no performance from her in return. "I came because I couldn't have done otherwise," he says again, quieter, as if testing whether the words hold up to repetition. They do. She doesn't answer in words. She doesn't need to. The silence between them now is the kind that has weight rather than tension, the kind two people share when something has been understood and doesn't yet need to be spoken aloud to be true. The trial is brief, conducted with the efficiency of a king who has decided exactly how much patience the matter deserves. Lady Voss's connection to the conspiracy unravels faster than she anticipated, not because she planned the poisoning herself, but because she knew enough, suspected enough, and said nothing rather than risk the convenient removal of a king she'd never much liked governing her territory. Complicity by silence is still complicity. Kale's judgment is exile rather than execution. A mercy Alara did not ask for and does not entirely understand, until he explains it to her privately, the day before the household is dissolved. Killing her makes you the daughter of a traitor, he says. Exiling her makes you simply someone she failed to break. I'd rather the second story follow you. It is, she realizes, the first time anyone has shaped a consequence around protecting her future rather than punishing her past. Margit and her sister remain, stripped of title, given the chance to build something honest from what's left. Alara does not know yet whether she'll forgive them. She knows she no longer needs their forgiveness to feel whole, and that feels like the larger victory. Months pass before the moon festival returns, the lanterns rehung in the same black iron frames, pine smoke threading through mountain air gone sharp with the turning season. Alara stands near the same pillar where she once watched from shadow, except this time. She does not need to hide in it. The crown she wears is light enough that she sometimes forgets it's there until the lantern light catches the metal and reminds her. Kale finds her exactly where he found her a year ago, though everything about the finding has changed. You're standing in your old spot, he says. Habits take longer to unlearn than crowns take to wear comfortably. He hands her a cup of festival wine, Thornwood's gift, renewed this year under careful new alliances, and watches her drink it without flinching, both of them aware of everything that small, ordinary act now means. I never finished answering your question, he says. Why I came to you that first night. You said you couldn't have done otherwise. That's still true. But I know the rest of it now. He says it simply, without the weight of performance, the kind of honesty that's earned rather than declared. I came because some part of me already knew you were the one person in that square worth the risk of everything else. She does not need a longer speech than that. She has learned this past year that the truest things arrive small and unhurried, asking nothing, certain of themselves. The lanterns sway overhead exactly as they did a year ago. The drum keeps the same slow rhythm meant to be felt in the chest. She finishes the wine, sets the cup down, and lets her hand rest in his without needing anyone's permission to claim the space. Stay, he says, where everyone can see you this time. She does.